Well, welcome back to the YAHOWAH blog. I'm your host, Craig Winn, and we have Miss Leah and Mr. Wookie also with us today as co-hosts. We are continuing our series on the arrival and the identity of the person who is best known as the Antichrist. Now, a bit of a disclaimer here. One of the things that I am unique in having done is I have proven that there is no such thing as a Jesus Christ. That entity never existed. He was conceived in 52 CE by Paul in his first letter, that to the Galatians. In fact, the first 14 books of the Christian New Testament did not include a single gospel. They were all written by Paul, who is responsible not only for the creation of Jesus Christ, but for the creation of the religion of Christianity. Even when the next three books were written, they were written by Paul's pals, his propagandas, and that would include Mark and Luke, and of course, then the book of Acts. They were the gospel and the story of Paul. And Paul, in his second letter to the Corinthians, acknowledged that he was demon possessed. And even before you get that far, just as you begin to review his first letter, that to the Galatians, Paul was deranged. He was irrational. He was ignorant. He was all things deceitful. He never once quoted Yahweh's testimony from the Torah, prophets, or Psalms accurately.
Didn't he call himself a rabbi?
He did. Paul was actually the first person ever to refer to himself as a rabbi. And it's one of the things that I have made a point here on X recently. Rough day, by the way, on X yesterday. Miserable day, actually. And one of the things that caused me to be spanked by X was when racists, who I confronted all day long, anti-Semites, mostly anti-Semite Christians, also Christians who were anti-Semites draped in neo-Nazi garb, some MAGAs also as anti-Semites, and just plain old racists as anti-Semites. They would constantly quote their New Testament because anytime you disagree with them, you must be a Jew. Well, those who have listened to these programs know that Yahweh has called me his Nakar. And as his Nakar, I am a Goy. Now, that being the case, other than to point out that they would be wrong and that I'm not a Jew, it didn't change the argument, because anybody that isn't evidently in favor of white supremacy must be a Jew. And all day, all they wanted to do was use the ad hominem argument, or fallacy, we should say, to condemn Jews. And in so doing, one of their favorites was to say that you are of the synagogue of Satan. It's a quote from Revelation. Now, mind you, I have proven that Revelation is a fraud.
Garbage.
It is not only a potpourri of citations from other prophets, meaning that it's plagiarism, but the account that it plagiarizes most from was a false prophet, not just a false prophet, but actually Satan's autobiography and playbook. That would be the book of Ezekiel. Yeah. And so everything that it speaks in terms of Gog and Magog and the like is utter nonsense, as is the...
Well, isn't that the Christians' favorite book is Ezekiel?
It's not crazy. It's actually not the Christian's favorite book, although it is a favorite. It is the rabbi's favorite. So it is a blight on it's a blight on their character. Yeah. It is interesting that the easiest way to find out that the book of Ezekiel is false is the fact that its primary theme is 25 ways to kill a Jew. And in that book, there are 2 exceedingly perverted rape scenes. And so it is actually indicative of this Towrahless one known as the Antichrist. And it concludes by perverting all of Yahowah's Moed Mikra. There's only one that actually survives, and it is misappropriated and changed relative to its date. And that would be Passover. All the rest are replaced by Satan's group of festivities. And the big theme is that there's a real estate developer in the end of this book.
Did you say two rapes?
A real estate developer that's in the end of this book that is known for his coloration, which is an orangey copper bronze color.
Bronzer.
And this fellow is Satan's primary accomplice in building a grandiose monstrosity with naming rights for him as the corporeal messenger and representative of Satan. And of course, we know a exceedingly arrogant man who is known for his orangish color, who is a real estate developer, who is also positioning himself to be king of the world, whose handlers are presenting him as if he were a god. Yes, that would be Donald Trump. And so there is a lot to learn from Ezekiel, but in this particular case, I'm running with the ball and following a path down a corridor that gets us a little ways from our topic. I was just wanting you to know that in the argument yesterday amongst anti-Semites, they were very quick to quote the synagogue of Satan. But as I pointed out to them, the synagogue of Satan is actually John's reference to Paul, since Paul was the one rabbi that John knew who claimed to be demon-possessed and who had condemned John ruthlessly in the book of Timothy. And so the synagogue of Satan is, in fact, a swipe at Paul. Now, saying that, I got spanked by Amazon. Now, that would mean that Paul got his feelings hurt. Now, Paul's been dead for 2,000 years. Paul was admittedly demon-possessed. And so it's stunning that that X could condemn me and censure me for pointing out that Revelation's synagogue of Satan, which was being used against me as they assumed I was a Jew, was actually a reference that John was making to his rival, Paul. But that was the nature of the day.
How dare you tear down their dead God on a stake?
Well, I didn't even get censured for that, although I certainly would be happy to do so. But you know, once again, how would you run afoul of the rules on places like X, where you're not allowed to make somebody feel bad based upon their preferences, when in fact the person you're criticizing, A, is a myth, and B, that person, well, if they had lived, which they didn't, would have been 2,000 years ago. Last time I checked, it's really hard to offend a corpse. But be that as it may. The fact of the matter is there was no Jesus. There was no Mr. Christ. Both were conceived by Paul. They're nothing but a crude counterfeit of the actual Messiah and Son of God, who happens to be David. So while this program is focused on the arrival and identity of the so-called Antichrist, the greatest treasure of all is to recognize there was no Jesus, and that the actual Messiah and Son of God, who was crucified by his own testimony in 33 CE, is David, who was king and is the returning king of the world. Now, that's the truth. It's affirmed over and over again by God. There is no denying it. There is no reference to a Jesus, to a Mr. Christ, to a Christian church, or anything related to Christianity or the New Testament in the Torah, prophets, and Psalms. And David is the most affirmed individual by a wide margin. And in the 89th Mizmor, Psalm, God himself says that David is my son, that he is the Messiah, and that he will be returning with him after he has served as Savior. And so there is a 0% possibility that that conclusion that I have just given you, which is the greatest discovery in human history pursuant to knowing God and your salvation, is anything other than 100% accurate. Therefore, there is no Christ. It is a complete and total fabrication and delusion.
It's Delulu land.
It is the make-believe land of false gods. Moreover, God is not a man, and God cannot die, and a bodily resurrection is counterproductive and also impossible. None of it is true. And Paul was according to God, who wrote 666 years prior to Paul's first letter in 52 CE through Chabauk, he called out Paul by name. He called him the plague of death. So if you're looking for your 666, there's a treasure for you as well.
I have a question about the guy Shaul, later named Paul. Didn't he admit to being a murderer of Yahud?
Yeah, Paul was every bit as good a choice for Satan as was Muhammad after him. Both men were murderous by their own admission. Both men, by their own admission, were sexual perverts. In fact, Paul went so far as to say, well, I am a sexual pervert. I wouldn't have known that I was a sexual pervert unless the Torah told me that I was a sexual pervert. Therefore, it's the Torah that is responsible for me being a sexual pervert.
Well, there's some circular thinking for
you. That's in the book of Romans. Yep. Mm-hmm. Which, by the way, Paul wrote to Rome, which is the very nation that bludgeoned Israel 3 times, causing the diaspora, leading directly to the Holocaust, murdering hundreds of thousands of Jews, crucifying many of them, tearing down the temple. And yet it is Paul that says that Rome was established by God for the purpose of determining who was loyal and submits to God, and that governments like Rome exist for good. And I would beg to differ. I would tell you that in the book of Daniel, which we're reading now, Rome was called the worst of beasts. So someone is lying.
Paul,
that would be true. All right, so that's our introduction. In previous programs, we have identified the Copper Con as Donald Trump. He was also described as an arrogant man with a big mouth that had goatish comb-over hair, and that he was really old as well.
I'd say all of that tracks really well.
Yes.
And going back to the 2 rapes, well, there are 2 accusations of rapes with this man.
Yeah, there are 2. There are actually a number of accusations of rape, but one has been proven in court, and the other, the testimony exists. The trial just never occurred because the perpetrator was, depending on your point of view, either committed suicide or was murdered. I'm of the was murdered group, and so her testimony exists, but not in a court of law, but under sworn oath. Yes, Donald Trump is a 2-time rapist, as well as a sexual pervert, and all of the other criterion that match. Of course, the absolute proof for those that are concerned, because that's quite a statement to say that Donald Trump is the person that is become known as the Antichrist. He's the great betrayer. To make that claim, you darn well better be right. And being right, just by Ezekiel saying that he'd be a real estate developer, that he would be in the process of building in the prime location of the world the greatest monument to ever be conceived, and that he be known for the color orange, and that he
has goat hair.
that his next
Dead
most
ringer.
interesting attribute was be his goatish looking hair, and that he's a really old guy with a big mouth and great ego. Those actually pale in comparison to the one overriding deciding issue, which is that in Daniel 9, as well as in Isaiah 17 and 18, it says emphatically that the Towrahless one is the one who forms an agreement with many nations for the express purpose of carving out a treaty that makes Israel indefensible by narrowing the country at its waist.
Two-state dissolution.
And this is going to occur, according to the prophets, prior to the beginning of the time of Yaakov's troubles, which commences on Shabuah, which is the 26th of May, 2026, 10 months from now. Therefore, when we are also told by Isaiah in the 18th chapter that the man who will perpetrate this and his country are meddling around the world, they have their emissaries travel around the world in planes and in ships. They're known for their buzzing wings, and that they are exceedingly arrogant in the way that they seek to control everyone in the world. And there are 70 some attributes that describe this man and that country, and they all fit
Make
Donald
America great again.
J. Trump. And we're told the timing, and it's clearly America and the leader of America. And within the next 10 months, it's not hard to figure out, folks. It's absolutely, unequivocally Donald J. Trump. And I know that there was a South Park episode that was just released that has the Trumpster climbing in bed with his wee little dinky and trying to get the attention of Satan. Well, it isn't quite that way, although that was interesting that their timing was a week after I made this pronouncement. But Donald Trump is actually Satan's stooge. He's the adversary, his advocate. He is the corporeal manifestation of Satan. And what I explained in
I think Satan feels very comfortable inside the old Donald.
Well, I'm sure.
Yeah, he likes it. Yeah, he does.
Satan is an interesting personality. And what I mean by that is that Satan isn't actually a rogue player.
Nope. Satan
does exactly what Satan's told to do.
There you go.
Satan is a cherub. The cherub were the most disciplined and empowered of the Malach. The Malach are a command and control regimen of spiritual implements. They operate as you would expect, soldiers in a military, and therefore they follow orders.
Automatons.
Yes. In Yeshaya, when Hasatan is described as the Lord of Babel, as Halel ben Shakar, he is, we are told that Yahowah is responsible for good and evil. He created the tree of good and evil, and he uses evil, like Hasatan, for a specific purpose. And in this case, he will play his role. Now, one of the things about Hasatan and the role that he plays is that, guess what? He doesn't play nicely with others. He's not trustworthy. He does not like people. So even if you are his chosen implement, that means a lot of things. Look at Paul, look at Muhammad, look at Donald Trump. They're all thieves. They're all sexual perverts. They're all egomaniacs. They're all duplicitous and consistent liars. They contradict themselves constantly. They can never be trusted. They are the great betrayers. And they're verbose. Satan has a type.
Yes, he does.
And
I know his type.
Nobody knows that type better than I do. Why? Because long before I came to this position, Yahweh asked me to write the most comprehensive analysis ever composed on Allah and Muhammad, based upon the Quran and the Hadith. And you'll see that in the 5 volumes of Goddamn Religion. Here happens to be volume 5. There are 5 of these. They're all 825 pages long. It is the most comprehensive, contextual, chronological, and best documented presentation of the Islamic scriptures, and particularly the Quran, put in chronological order, the entire Quran, and put into the context of Muhammad's life. So I know Muhammad, and I know Satan's type.
It's fairly dark, but it comes with some pretty good dark humor.
Oh yeah, there's a lot of humor in Goddamn Religion. There's also a lot of humor in Twistianity. I recognize in writing these books that Yahweh has a type too. And if you look at Yahweh's type, they are defined by fellas like, guess who? Elia. Elia is God's favorite fellow from a point of view of being one who exposes and condemns religion. So if you're looking for who does God like, who does God prefer most when exposing and condemning religion, it's Elia. And Elia is best noted because he was awesomely sarcastic. So I do my best to give God what he likes. And so there is
not just that he's
lots
clever,
of humor.
He's witty. He's got the good comebacks. He knows a good roast. I mean, he's a master class in roasting.
He knows both.
Like, really?
Both literally roasting and figuratively roasting. Anyway, this is one of the 5 volumes of Twistianity. This happens to be volume 4. There are 5 volumes also of Twistianity, just as there are 5 volumes of Goddamn Religion. And in doing that, I came to know Paul better than anyone in human history. So I know Paul better than anyone in human history. I know Muhammad better than anyone in human history. And they are Satan's type. And I know how they stack up to the Donald. And guess what? Donald's the same type.
Would you say psychopaths are his type?
There is 100% certainty that Paul was a psychopath and that Muhammad was a psychopath.
Absolutely.
And there is 100% certainty that Donald J. Trump is a psychopath. Now, I don't know if Donald J. Trump has always been a psychopath.
No, I think that changed.
And there is a lot of people are confused because they think that Donald Trump is pro-Israel. And that he just has a little ego issue, but otherwise, he's a good conservative president. Well, you aren't paying attention.
Nope.
Something dramatically happened to the Donald after losing the previous election. And not only did he take it poorly and sponsor riots where his followers were thrown in prison, he was sued time and time and time again, and indicted, not only indicted, but convicted in criminal court and in civil court, losing every case, forfeiting hundreds of millions of dollars, on the verge of bankruptcy, alone, neglected, pathetic, and within months of spending the rest of his life in jail.
Narcissistic,
a convicted felon. And that was Donald Trump, with still some semblance of his ego, even as he walked into one losing courtroom after another, and something snapped. That Donald couldn't handle it. This is a man who has never accomplished anything in his life. If he had taken the money his perverted father, his anti-Semitic father, his deceitful and conniving father had given him and just put it in a mutual fund, he would have been much wealthier today than he was bankrupting one development after another. The Donald's a lousy businessman. He does not know the art of the deal. He is a complete and utter loser.
If you do a deal with him, count your fingers walking away, buddy. That's the dumb.
He is talking about
Even Epstein knew it.
all of his trade deals, like the one that he had with Japan a week ago. The Japanese are saying there was no deal. We
Such
didn't.
a liar.
There's nothing signed. We haven't committed to give hundreds of millions of dollars to Trump's
He pulls it out of
disposal as to
nowhere.
what he wishes to do with it. None of what he said about it was true. That prior to that, he claimed, well, I did the deal of the century with China, and they're giving us, like hundreds of billions of dollars. And the Chinese said, no, there is no agreement. We're going to go back in and try to negotiate something. But at this point, nope, there's no agreement.
Oh, the deal he so-called made with India and Pakistan? No, that was no deal. He pulled the people who were keeping the peace, and they stared fighting again.
Well, actually,
really?
Actually, between India and Pakistan, which Donald is owned by the Pakistani side of this is despised in India. The Indians said there was no agreement. We didn't even talk to the man.
What are you talking about?
Yeah, what are you talking about? He's been nominated for a peace prize based upon negotiating a solution between us and Pakistan. We never talked to him. It's a complete and utter lie. It's called confabulation, where there is no correlation between what's going on in Donald Trump's mind and what comes out of his mouth and reality.
No, not one.
This is exactly what you would expect from someone who is demon possessed. And that is what happened to Donald Trump. He made a deal with the devil to get back into the White House, to claim to power again. And the new Donald Trump is a clear and present danger to everyone on earth because he is demon possessed, and Satan doesn't like people.
Take note, MAGA.
There is your problem.
You are sycophants for Satan himself. Take note.
But what is particularly sad is while an overwhelming majority of Americans now know that Donald Trump is a fraud and that Donald Trump cannot be trusted and that Donald Trump is a sexual pervert.
Ooh, yeah.
While the majority know that now, and they don't even know the half of it. Yeah. The fact is, there is one country, where Donald Trump is beloved, where they worship him as if he were the second coming of Cyrus the Messiah.
Yep. Israel.
If Donald Trump were to run for prime minister of Israel, he'd win by a landslide. And he is the man most responsible for betraying them, according to the prophets. That just shows you how
we are a bad judge of character. We really are.
Seriously flawed Israel has become in their thinking. But, this is the same Israel that is taking the rope that Donald Trump has given them to hang themselves, and thinks that if they continue to bomb Gaza and destroy more of Gaza, ruin every building in Gaza, every street in Gaza, every home, every school, every hospital, everything in Gaza, and they kill, maybe tens of thousands more Gazans, that somehow they're going to win that war.
Can't win a war with bombs.
I'm sorry. All Israel is doing is digging its own grave. Now, did the Gazans, Muslims who murdered Jews and raped Jews and kidnapped Jews
and torture them
on 10/7 deserve it? Absolutely. But what do you care about what they deserve? What matters is the survival of Israel, of changing the IDF such that it is prepared to deal with what it could not handle at all, what it completely failed to respond to, which was the invasion of these Muslims from Gaza, some 4,000 of them that wreaked havoc for an entire day without being checked. And when they were finally checked, they were mostly checked by locals. In fact, there are so many reports now of when the IDF finally did arrive about 12 hours late, they killed more Jews than they did Islamic terrorists. It's called the Hannibal Protocol because they don't want more hostages. So the IDF was a complete and utter failure on 10/7, and it still doesn't have any understanding is how to respond. And while there are many, many brave men and women, good men and women, who serve and who have lost their lives in the invasion of Gaza, it was counterproductive. It had a 0% chance of prevailing. You cannot rid Islamic Gaza of Islamic Hamas, not with bullets and bombs.
Why?
And there are still as many armed Muslim mujahideen that want to kill Jews in Gaza as there were when the war began. Every time you kill a religious fanatic who wants to die a martyr killing you, you reward them and you manufacture more of them. That was predictable. This war had a 0% chance of prevailing on those goals. It is why Netanyahu is such a clear and present danger to Israel. So long as Netanyahu is in charge of Israel, there is literally no hope for Israel. The next 98 months are going to be miserable. Israel is unbelievably vulnerable at the moment. And there is no signs that that's going to change anytime soon. So this is our reality. And it's important that you know it. And it's important that you know how easily Israel is to mislead and how hard Israel is to get their attention. You know, I spend more than half of my day on social media trying to get the attention of Israelis. And I will tell you that yesterday was a great example. I took on over 300 anti-Semite who were draped in Christianity and neo-Nazi garb,
holding their crosses,
and fought them all day long. And I only had 2 Jews interject. And both of them were to slander me. So you know, the pro-Israel sites on X are in it for themselves. They're self-promoting. They don't give a crap about how terrible what has happened has become, or that there is no chance of success. Jews haven't changed since the Exodus, where Moshe gave up on the children of Israel. Yes, Moses. He told God, why don't you just kill me? This job is miserable. It's impossible. I don't want it anymore. It's embarrassing. You should be ashamed of yourself for giving it to me. No one can deal with these people. They are impossible. They haven't changed. And by the way, Yahweh didn't disagree. He didn't say, come on, man, it's not that bad. You know, we can make this work. There's some redeeming qualities here.
Have you ever been to a
what
Jewish
Yahweh said
wedding?
is, I'm with you all the way. In fact, I just came in from torching everything around this community because I'm that pissed at them. You told God to shut up and go away, that you never wanted to hear from him or see him again. And then you erased his name. And then you pretend like the God that you've created through Judaism, Hashem, gives a crap about you. That he's the God that you've made in your image. So yeah, he's responsible to you. He listens to your prayers. While the real one said, I'm out of here. I'm divorcing myself of you. You are no longer my children. I'll engage with you again when you engage with me, and not a moment sooner. Now, you think he told the truth, or you just don't care?
I don't think they care.
I don't think you care.
They prefer their Hashem.
I think you prefer your Hashem that you
God.
can shape in rabbinical garb. I bet your Hashem has a black hat and he wears a phylactery on his head. And he's, yeah. He's got little black straps on his his arm. Probably has a beanie under his black cap. Why not? Yeah, but that's your God. I bet he's all dressed up that way. I'll bet that you picture him banging his head against that same stone wall, huh?
That Herod built.
I'm surprised you didn't get him to say, you know, the hell with my son, hell with the Messiah. I really didn't have a chosen one. I don't give a crap about David. I don't know why I said all those nice things about him. I really think this warlord that you picked, Bar Kokhba, the son of a star, I think he's much better. We'll go with him instead.
Yeah, and then we can put the star on the flag too.
Yeah.
Call it our call it.
Yeah.
Doves.
Why don't you take a pagan star and the star that you were mocked under, that you were shamed under, and you replace my menorah, my sign, with that goddamn star, and just see if I like it any better than I like the Christian dead God on a stick. Okay, it's an improvement over the dead God on a stick.
A little bit, but not much.
So, yeah,
not much.
But there is nothing worse than the dead God on a stick. So there you go. All right, so that's where we are.
I don't know. All of the Mouse is pretty ugly stuff.
Well, there is really the Quran is the worst book ever written. Deadly, immoral. It doesn't have. There is nothing redeeming in the entire book. Most of it's plagiarized. It's actually plagiarized from the rabbinic Babylonian Talmud. Matter of fact, without the Babylonian Talmud, the Quran would be about that thick.
It ain't got no legs.
It ain't got no legs. It wouldn't even be. Islam wouldn't be a religion if rabbis hadn't sold Muhammad Talmud readings for $1.
I think it'd be the same about Christianity if it weren't for
Paul's. It wouldn't be a New Testament.
Yeah.
If rabbis hadn't trained Paul as a rabbi, so he knew where to look to pervert verses that he could misquote, misrepresent to create his fictitious Jesus. And rabbis are responsible for both of the two religions that have pummeled Jews all of these years, and yet Jews still revere them.
Idiots.
You prefer rabbis over the Nakar whom God has sent. You prefer Donald Trump over Yahowah.
That's
so,
true.
You have a problem, Israel. And I'm just here. I'm not going to sugarcoat it from you. I'm not going away. And I'm not going to pretend that it's all okay, because it isn't. And most of you are going to die over the next 8.5 years, and you will have done it to yourselves. It would need to happen.
There's only one man on the planet that has plans to do this. They are called the Abraham Accords. They have nothing to do with Abraham, but they have everything to do with carving the heart out of Israel.
Well, it's amazing,
presenting it to her while she's supposed to coo over it. Are you kidding me?
Well,
this is the guy you love?
Yeah. Well, we're told that
sweetheart,
that Donald J. Trump, as the great betrayer, is going to arrive, and I approved this in our previous program, that he's going to arrive in Jerusalem on the 29th of January, 2030. And that he is going to solicit and solidify his political power such that he can present himself as the supreme ruler at that time. And it will be during Ramadan, exactly 7 days prior to the concluding feast. And that he will then, 33 days later, proclaim that, 45 days later, he's going to proclaim that he is God. All of those posters and images and designs that you see on X and in Facebook of the Donald walking through the arena with him being bigger than life, chiseled as if he were a god. Yeah, they're not kidding around. He's going to present himself as a god. That's the great abomination. And it's going to occur on the Ides of March, the 15th of March in 2030, 45 days later. 33 days after that, on Passover, is when Yada, as Makael, and Elia arrive to serve as the final two witnesses, heralding Dod's return. That's the timing of events. So we'll continue with the story as it is presented in Daniel. That was quite an introduction, Ms. Leah. We don't shortchange anybody on information, do we?
No.
That is the job, is to be transparent and to share what people need to know so they're in a position to make an informed decision. This text continues. And also, concerning the 10 horns. There's the 10 horns are 10 political blowhards and boneheads.
Mm-hmm.
That's why it's called a Karen, a horn. They are political leaders. They're not nations. Yes, they're political leaders of nations, but they are political leaders. They're boneheads and blowhards. They are the 10-nation confederacy. I like to call them the Big Ten Conference. And they are going to partner with the Donald and forming a Islamic state of terror carved out of the heart of Israel, and then of marshaling the world against Israel to annihilate the Jewish state. That's who these 10 horns represent. And also concerning the 10 horns, these political blowhards and boneheads who were in his head in the beginning. There was another in the end who arose and was lifted up. So they fell. These three as before. We've been told before that there were 10 political leaders that sided with the Towrahless one, this great betrayer, Donald Trump, and that the 10-nation confederacy that is carved out of Imperial Rome and the Roman Catholic Church, the territory they both covered, and we've gone over those names, and we'll speak more about them in a moment, that there are 3 of them that will be humbled by the Towrahless one. I think it's obvious that one that Trump just loves to abuse. I mean, he slaps him around as much as his wife does.
Macron.
Will be Macron, but we'll watch and we'll see how this develops. And it says, and this horn that had eyes and a mouth. So we're learning here that for those that think that the horns represent nations, no. Nations don't have eyes and mouths. This horn has eyes and a mouth. It's the second time we've been told this, and therefore the horn represents a person. And he spoke profusely and arrogantly. Malal Rab. He conversed powerfully, using many words and long speeches. And by appearances, he was greater in status. Rob, it was more powerful and far-reaching, claiming, of course, a higher status than his associates who had joined in and formed this league with him. Daniel 7:20. So Trump is the head of the 10-nation confederacy that I call the Big Ten Conference. So it is curious as a thing to note that Judea was bludgeoned by Rome's legions for 2 centuries, even before the destruction of their nation. The Israelites would be persecuted by Roman politicians and terrorized by her church for millennia. But Imperial Rome and the Roman Catholic Church would spawn something far worse still. 10 nations would rise out of the beast to torment Yehudim during the time of troubles, and these 10 nations would be led by 10 very arrogant, boneheaded leaders. Yahowah only speaks of Goyim when Gentiles are influencing Israelites. Otherwise, he is uninterested in Middle Eastern and European politics, their wars, and religions. Therefore, not only are Rome and Roman Catholicism to be seen as vicious monsters, in the exceedingly unlikely event that these horns are nations rather than people, and I think the likelihood of that on a 1 to 10 scale would be a 0, then the top 10 emerging from Imperial Rome in Italy might be Spain, France, England, Germany, Austria-Hungary, the Balkans, Greece, Turkey, Syria, and Egypt. And if just the Holy Roman Empire is to spawn them, since this beast evolved into the Holy Roman Empire, then it is Germany, Austria, Czechoslovakia, Belgium, Netherlands, Switzerland, Liechtenstein, surprisingly, Italy, France, and Poland. There were 10 nations in the Holy Roman Empire. If addressing 10 nations to initially emerge out of Imperial Rome and those Christianized by the reign of Theodosius, when the empire became the church, they would include Italy, Spain, Gaul, which is France, Britain, Pannonii, which is Austria and Hungary, Mosai, which is the 8 nations carved out of Yugoslavia, Thrace, which would be Bulgaria and Romania, Asia Minor, today's Turkey, Syria, and Egypt. Germany has now been excluded from this list because it was not under Roman control at the time. Also, the strip of land along the southern Mediterranean coast of northern Africa was so thin that it really cannot be ascribed to anything on this list. These things considered, I am certain that we're not speaking of nations here. These are boneheaded blowhards, and they're modern politicians. After all, the same egomaniac horn with a big mouth and odd comb-over, goatish hair is presented as a man rising above other men. This being the case, his partners in crime against Israel would include Keir Starmer of the UK, Emmanuel Macron of France, Frederick Merz of Germany, Giorgia Meloni of Italy, Mark Carney of Canada, Recep Erdogan of Turkey, Mohammed bin Salman of Saudi Arabia, Tamim bin Al-Thani of Qatar, and even Ahmed al-Shara al-Jalani of Syria, along with the possibility of Mohammed bin al-Nahyan of the UAE, since he has invested heavily in Trump and has been more exceedingly influential with him. Now, if you might say, wait a minute, I've read that Maloney said, nope, I'm not recognizing a Palestinian state. Then you only read the headline.
Yep, you're not paying attention.
You're not paying attention. The same thing would be true if you think that Starmer said the same thing, because neither did. What they both said is absolutely unequivocally, I am going to recognize a Palestinian state. I just want the state of Palestine to be formed while we acknowledge a Palestinian state, as opposed to say, oh, there's a Palestinian state, and then try to figure out how it is actually established. So both are absolutely and unequivocally committed. And you might say, well, why didn't you include Spain and other countries in that list? Well, the reason is that Trump doesn't have a relationship with them. And, there's people on that I didn't include on that list that that Trump does have a relationship with, but that are too pro-Israel to betray God's people. And since this does not specify whether the worst of them, as the devil's advocate, will be one of the 10 or another besides them, the lunatic league could be comprised of 9 or 10 others. Now, that said, I have to also acknowledge that we're going to go back through the 1 and the 10 later. And when we return to this narrative, it is clear that it is 1 plus 10. So it's not 1 plus 9, it is 1 plus 10. Also, the 3 who fall is likely a reference to those who are the most either subservient to Trump, that he can just cut off in the knees.
Well, he discards everybody that he meets,
or
right?
anyone who challenges him that he will take down, as the Hannibal Lecter of politics. So it's one of the two. They could be in that diminished group for either one of those two things. Either someone like Macron that Trump finds easy to boss around and likes to boss around. Carney is another that he likes to toy with. Or they are somebody that has the courage occasionally to stand up against him, which case he would devour
Oh,
them.
yeah. He'd cut him down.
Yes. Trump devours anyone who is perceived to be disloyal. Now, and he doesn't trust anyone. Of course, he doesn't even trust
even against him.
Doesn't even trust
in any
himself.
way.
So if you're looking for the three most likely to grovel at Trump's feet for crumbs off his table, I would list Macron,
Oh,
Starmer,
hell yeah.
and Carney.
Yeah, absolutely.
If looking for the most prone to be eaten alive and expendable, you could add Al-Shara, Mertz, and Maloney, because one isn't controllable and the other two may have the chutzpah to stand up against him. I suspect that we still have even more definite accounting that is going to occur here after the Islamic State confab that is headlined by Macron and MBS in New York takes place. It has been now postponed on 2 occasions, the last time for the 12-day war. But during this conclave that is headed by Donald Trump and includes Macron and MBS of Saudi Arabia for the purpose of announcing a Fakistinian state, an Islamic state of terror called out of Israel, the U.S. State Department has already released cables that said that this is something that the Trump administration is soliciting, that it doesn't want any nation to get in the way, and it would view that any nation trying to create a Palestinian state that skirts around Trump's agenda, even if it achieves the agenda but doesn't fall under Trump's control, that nation will be considered an enemy of the United States.
Of course, he wants his Nobel Peace Prize.
That's it. And so that's where we are. And when the press secretary, KKK Barbie as she is known, was asked questions about this, she said, yes, the president recognizes that a Palestinian state is necessary in the region. And then when Netanyahu was last in the Oval Office and was asked during dinner, Trump was asked if he is going to make a Palestinian state part of the agenda. He told Netanyahu to answer the question, and the first words out of Netanyahu's mouth were, we acknowledge the need for a full independent state of Palestine. It has been determined, and it will be put into effect within the next 10 months because the prophet Isaiah and the prophet Gabriel, who is Dode, told us that this would occur, and they told us when it would occur.
I have just one question. Please, somebody tell me why Hillel Ben Shakar wants a piece of the Nobel Peace Award.
Just their ego. It's the number one prize in the world, so they want it for their ego. And if you look at the people that have received it, like Arafat, you just go, I think I'd want the Great Fly Swatter Award for having taken out 2 mosquitoes with the same swat, and I would say that is a far greater award. But, that's just me. So Trump sponsors on behalf of the betrayal of Israel will be solidified, as will be the names of those promoting the Donald, now called Dad, by the faithful for his coveted Nobel Prize. Now, based upon what we have read thus far, the name of the Towrahless one has become obvious. And while it is important that we have identified him at this time before anybody else did, and before he betrays Israel, because that way you can know for certain that we figured this out from God's Torah, prophets, and Psalms, and are revealing it to you as a result of these things, that you can trust everything that we're saying. What matters even more than this is his agenda. which is to make Israel indefensible through the imposition of an Islamic state carved out of the nation's core. Now he's going to say exactly the opposite. So are they all. They're going to say, oh, security, peace, living as neighbors side by side, resolving all of the problems. Aren't we great? And we're going to guarantee Israel's
Let's
security.
all hold hands and sing Kumbaya.
They can't. The United States can't beat the Houthis. We lost to the Taliban in Afghanistan.
Oh my God.
We lost to Saddam Hussein in Iraq, and we killed him and still couldn't beat him. We lost in Libya and buried Muammar Gaddafi. I mean, we lost in Afghanistan, and Syria, and we got what we wanted, which was al-Jilani. Look at, we got all of the EU and NATO and the United States collectively against Russia on a war that the United States started 20 years ago, and America is getting its cock cleaned. Just absolutely spit out. And so, what in the hell do you think a guarantee from the United States or any European nation? Well, it's a French salute. Hey, there is a 0% chance.
What's the American salute?
That's the French. Oh, well, the American salute is, we kill you. Yeah. That you think that there is any chance that that's going to occur, or that the Muslims are going to honor a peace deal with Israel and say, oh, now that we have a state of Palestine, we're going to live in harmony with the Jews.
Yeah.
It was just always about giving a homeland to those poor Palestinians that we really cared about. And now that they have one, we're going to live in peace and harmony, and we're all going to sing Kumbaya at night, and it's going to be lovely. If you think that is the case, then you are completely ignorant of Allah, Muhammad, the Quran, the Hadith, and Islam,
or reality,
and Islamic history, or reality
in general.
And you know something? Then you're just too stupid to even open your mouth. So if you think that is the case, please do us all a favor.
Shut up.
And shut up. I'm glad we had this talk. Based upon what we have read about this Towrahless one, we know his agenda now. We know the timing of all of this. And we know that everyone's going to renege on their promises of security, because the prime objective of the Towrahless one is to be worshipped as God. And well, there aren't very many Jews, and there are 2 billion Muslims, and there's at least 1 billion Marxists that are all going to say, oh, yay, yay, yay. And how many MAGAs? And well, based upon my experience yesterday on X, between the Christians and the MAGAs, there are so many anti-Semitic races out there. It's just repulsive. And all of them will cheer if Israel is blamed again and destroyed. And so it will be. And he's going to impose exceedingly harsh penalties on anyone that is critical of his egomaniacal antics. And it just becomes a downward death spiral that you find nations capitulating. You know, here, this most recent deal with the EU. And, you know, he had Ursula, who has all of the horsepower of, this bottle of water. And she just rolled over and played dead. And Donald Trump is one of the few men that thinks the way you should negotiate is to make your opponent lose and to humble them.
Cower. Yeah.
And I can tell you, having been in business, that if that is your mindset, you will lose 100% of the time. Every deal that you create, the partner that you created with will hate you from the beginning and will begin at the beginning looking for all ways to cheat and to renege on the deal. The only deals that are artfully done are those deals where everybody wins. And if you can't create that kind of a deal, which the Donald can't because his
No.
ego won't allow it, you have zero chance of success.
And
So they
stop
may-
calling yourself the art of the deal. You don't know crap
No,
about it.
No, he doesn't.
Oh,
And
so annoying.
that's what's happened yet again. So one of the reasons that Yahweh sent Gabriel, who is God's most capable and competent man, that would be Dod, and Michael, the one who is right about God, that would be Yada, to meet with Daniel in Babel is because he wants us to know how and when the events at the commencement and the conclusion of the time of Jacob's trouble will play out. Since so much is at stake. Quite literally, the fulfillment of God's promises on Shabuah, Towrah, both parts of Towrah, the harvest and the red heifer, and then of the grand family reunion of Yom Kippurim, followed by camping out together for 1,000 years of Sukkot. It's all on the line if we do not prevail in getting you to listen and respond favorably. That's why we're here. So we know that the completion of the Moedim and the restoration of a final mortal remnant of his people and the return of his son is all on the line. And by promoting all of this detailed information 2,600 years in advance of its fulfillment, God proves that he is divine and that he inspired the resulting witness. In a world of lies and liars, we can confidently trust and rely upon what Yahweh has proven to be accurate. This means we can learn from his prophetic revelations, and we can capitalize on the prolific teaching and the guidance recorded in this text.
Better sooner than later.
Is that ever true? Mm-hmm. There are still other reasons for this sweeping presentation of history, beginning with Babylon. Excuse me. I have occasionally, and she takes advantage of this show when she thinks I am not going to intervene to bite her paws. And we're making such progress, we need to make certain that we just have a little diversion. So the eyeglasses were a good diversion. So excuse me. I actually love Asher, and I don't want Asher hurting herself.
Yes, no,
which is why
she licks her paws until she bites
I
them.
intervene. Yes, she will literally lick and then bite her paws until she can't walk on them, until they are raw. And so with Rich treating her and myself and Leah treating her, we have her recovering nicely. And she is much better. But occasionally she goes back, well, into
she's talking now.
Old mode. She's now talking to Rich and saying, come on, we need to talk about this. Okay, but now there are other reasons for this sweeping presentation and this review of future history, if you will, beginning with the fact that Babylon is the impetus of it all, and that Babylon speaks of being confused by the intermixing of religion and politics, and that all of this is going to come to a conclusion now in 98 months from the time of this program. And as a good father, Yahweh wants his children prepared to face where they're headed so that they are prepared to rebuke the ways of man, and particularly this man that is poised to betray Israel. Had they trusted Yahweh sooner, they would have known that institutionalizing religion and integrating it with politics and militarism,
bad idea.
was a really bad idea.
Oh.
And that these haunting overtures from Babylon and the Babylonian Talmud would haunt them. as
And
these
here it
things
is.
migrated through Persia and Greece into imperial and Catholic Rome and into Europe, where Jews were kept essentially as slaves for so very long, under the control of both Christianity and Judaism. Had God's people paid attention, Yahweh would have been, well, they would have been forewarned, and they would have avoided the conflict with Rome. They could have stopped Christianity in the bud, exposing and condemning Paul and the false claims made of Hamashiach, the Messiah, Dod. And even now, they would be on the lookout for the blowhards and boneheads who are in the process of turning against them. And they would have been equipped to rebuke this Towrahless one instead of support him as the most popular person now in Israel. Time is running out, my friends.
TikTok.
This is evil's last hurrah. Yahweh has long been aware that his people's backs are going to have to be pushed up against the wall with threats of another Holocaust manifesting before them.
No, this isn't going to be just another. This is going to be the. This is going to be existential.
Yeah, there were 6 million Jews killed in the last Holocaust. This time it will take between 10 and 11 million Jewish lives to gain their attention.
Take note.
The religious and political are so distant from God, so defiant, so wrapped up in the religious Hashem that they have conceived in their image, that to break through and get a word in edgewise amongst their shrill voices, to call a remainder of his people back home, it's exceedingly difficult. Well, I want to share one more passage and we'll conclude once we've covered this one. And it reads, I continued looking, this is Daniel speaking, and this particular horn, this political blowhard, was engaged in war against the set-apart ones. And he was prevailing over them until the restoring witness, who was long in days, came, such that he provided judgment and justice to the set-apart ones of the Most High. And at the specific appointed time of this occurrence, he reached out and was extended, approaching and present, so that the set-apart ones could inherit and become royalty with sovereignty and kinship. As we like to say, that was Daniel 7:22. There's a lot to unpack there.
Oh, there's a lot to unpack on that one. Yes.
And all we're going to do here is just begin with it. So we'll use a teaser so that you're encouraged to join us on our
He
notes.
just loves those cliffhangers.
We are going to do.
Hang on, kids. The cliff is coming.
We're going to do that again. So it says, I continued looking. So here's the 10-Nation Confederacy and its leader, Donald J. Dumpster. And he has cut off 3 of these people at the knees doing what he does best. So there's 7 nations still in his confederacy. And we've been told in the 12th chapter that he is going to announce his supreme rulership in Israel on the 29th of January of 2030, and that he is going to announce that he is God on the Ides of March the 15th and 2030, and that it will be 33 days thereafter that the 2 witnesses arrive on Passover. That's the 18th of April in 2030, and that this is the worst time of Jacob's troubles. So we know that that is our timeline here, and that the imposition of this terror state carved out of the heart of Israel that makes Israel indefensible, and this realization that none of the countries that say we will provide for Israel's security can be trusted, that's going to occur between now and the 22nd of May 2026. Just 299 days from right now. So that's where we stand in terms of our timing. So now he says, I continued looking. And this particular horn and political blowhard was engaged in war. You know, the thing that you can always tell about a politician is that whatever they say, this is clear, it's really murky. If they say, I come in peace, there's going to be war. If they say, I am telling you the truth, they are lying.
If they tell you shelter in place, run.
What this president said that he's going to end these wars, he was going to end them before he even got into office. He's going to end them in 15 minutes is all it was going to take him. And they are all in far worse shape than they were when he took office. Well, he lied. And what politicians quickly realize is that when people at war, there's a boogeyman out there. And it's always easy for a politician to say, you know, by comparison to that other guy out there, I'm pretty good. It's that other guy that out there is the enemy. And we all need to get together and fight that enemy. And when a nation's at war, you are not allowed to speak out against your leader, even if your leader is a piece of crap. And so that is why politicians love war. It's why Macron wants a war. It's why Starmer wants a war.
Desperate for power,
they're
baby.
Losers. They're exceedingly unpopular. And the only way for them to stay in office is to have a boogeyman out there and to declare war on them. They don't care how many people die. What, you've been almost 2 million Ukrainians that have died in a war that the U.S. fought for no other reason than to expand NATO and irritate Russians.
Stupid.
2 million. And they continue that war. They don't give a crap about Ukrainian lives. All these Europeans that are saying, well, Ukrainians out there dying. We got to support them. Otherwise, that crazy old Putin, man, he's going to keep on going. You started the war. There's only one way to end it, which is to stop sending arms to your proxy. Real simple. And because you told your proxy to walk away from the peace accord that was negotiated 2 years ago that would have resolved this war, and you told him, walk away, don't take that deal, even though both Ukraine and Russia thought it was a great deal to end the war. Now, 2 million more lives lost. That deal is so far in the rear view mirror that it's going to require giving Russia about 10 times what Russia would have taken back then. You lost. So he is saying here that what he saw is that this horn that promised, oh, I'll give you security, Israel, brought nothing but war. That's what that promise is worth. If you're listening, Israel, and you think, yay, we'll go for the two-state, which some 66% of you are in favor of, because it comes with normalization from Saudi Arabia, who reminded Israel once again this week that normalization with Saudi Arabia comes with a Palestinian state. And the promises of security are going to turn out with the reality of war. Al-Aqsa Flood 2.0 is going to occur within a year of the time that state is established, and it's going to be not 10 times worse, not even 100 times worse, but 1,000 times worse than October 7th. All because you were so boneheaded yourselves that you wouldn't listen. So, good place for us to stop.
That's our cliffhanger.
We will
Okay.
pick up this story again and speak of exactly who those set apart ones are and who is the one who is the restoring witness that not only saves them but delivers their inheritance. Because if you don't know, he's a fella you're going to want to know. Only if you want to survive on this planet past the next 8 years. Thank you for listening. I am your host, Yada, and over there we have the very, very engaged Wookiee. One paw up for the Wook today.
Yeah.
And Miss Leah. And thank you, Rich, as the keeper of the cables. Here we are. Looking forward to bringing you another program at this time tomorrow. By the way, just as one program note, I am spending now a majority of my time actually translating in Daniel. I have made it now about a third of the way through the 8th chapter which be the third time I've been through this material, updating my translations of it. And then we'll make my way through the 9th chapter, having already done the 12th and the 7th. And we will have a pretty comprehensive review of this aspect of time. So that is where we are in terms of developing more material to review with you. So thank you again for listening. This has been the YAHOWAH blog.